Please like the video and share it so that it reaches many more people and you get sawaba, or rewards from Allah. This could be a sawabe jariyah or continuous reward for you long after you are gone.
Volume 1, Book 12, number 814. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. The Prophet said, "Whoever eats garlic or onions should keep away from our mosque or should remain in his house." Jabir bin Abdullah, in another narration said, "Once a big pot containing cooked vegetables was brought. On finding unpleasant smell coming from it, the Prophet asked, 'What is in it?' He was told all the names of the vegetables that were in it. The Prophet ordered that it should be brought near to some of his companions who were with him. When the Prophet saw it, he disliked to eat it and said, 'Eat. I don't eat, for I converse with those whom you don't converse with, i.e. the angels.'" Volume 1, Book 12, number 815. Narrated by Abdul Aziz. A man asked Anas, "What did you hear from the Prophet about garlic?" He said, "The Prophet said, 'Whoever has eaten this plant should neither come near us nor pray with us.'" Volume 1, Book 12, number 816. Narrated by Sulaiman Ash-Shaybam. I heard Ash-Shabi saying, "A person who was accompanying the Prophet passed by a grave that was separated from the other graves told me that the Prophet once led the people in the funeral prayer and the people had aligned behind him. I said, 'O Abba, Amra, who told you about it?' He said, 'Ibn Abbas.'" Volume 1, Book 12, number 817. Narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. The Prophet said, "Ghusl, taking a bath, on Friday is compulsory for every Muslim reaching the age of puberty." Volume 1, Book 12, number 818. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. One night I slept at the house of my aunt Maimuna and the Prophet slept, too. He got up, for prayer, in the last hours of the night and performed a light ablution from a hanging leather skin. Amra, the sub-narrator, described that the ablution was very light. Then he stood up for prayer and I got up too and performed the ablution in the same way and joined him on his left side. He pulled me to the right and prayed as much as Allah will. Then he lay down and slept and I heard his breath sounds till the muadhin came to him to inform him about the Fajr prayer. He left with him for the prayer and prayed without repeating the ablution. Sufyan the sub-narrator said, "We said to Amra, 'Some people say, the eyes of the Prophet sleep but his heart never sleeps.'" Amra said, "Ubay bin Umar said, 'The dreams of the prophets are divine inspirations.'" Then he recited, "O my son, I have seen in dream that I was slaughtering you, offering you in sacrifice." 37.102. Volume 1, Book 12, number 819. Narrated by Anas bin Malik. My grandmother Mulaika invited Allah's apostle for a meal which she had prepared specially for him. He ate some of it and said, "Get up. I shall lead you in the prayer." I brought a mat that had become black owing to excessive use and I sprinkled water on it. Allah's apostle stood on it and prayed 2 rakat. And the orphan was with me, in the first row. And the old lady stood behind us. Volume 1, Book 12, number 820. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. Once I came riding a she-ass and I, then, had just attained the age of puberty. Allah's apostle was leading the people in prayer at Mina facing no wall. I passed in front of the row and let loose the she-ass for grazing and joined the row and no one objected to my deed. Volume 1, Book 12, number 821. Narrated by Aisha. Once Allah's apostle delayed the Aisha prayer till Umar informed him that the women and children had slept. Then Allah's apostle came out and said, "None from amongst the dwellers of earth have prayed this prayer except you." In those days none but the people of Medina prayed. Volume 1, Book 12, number 822. Narrated by Abdur Rahman bin Abbas. A person asked Ibn Abbas, "Have you ever presented yourself at the Eid prayer with Allah's apostle?" He replied, "Yes, and had it not been for my kinship position with the Prophet, it would not have been possible for me to do so, for he was too young." The Prophet went to the mark near the house of Kathir bin as-Salt and delivered a sermon. He then went towards the women. He advised and reminded them and asked them to give alms. So the woman would bring her hand near her neck and take off her necklace and put it in the garment of Bilal. Then the Prophet and Bilal came to the house. Volume 1, Book 12, number 823. Narrated by Aisha. Once Allah's apostle delayed the Aisha prayer till Umar informed him that the women and children had slept. The Prophet came out and said, "None except you from amongst the dwellers of earth is waiting for this prayer." In those days, there was no prayer except in Medina, and they used to pray the Aisha prayer between the disappearance of the twilight and the first third of the night. Volume 1, Book 12, number 824. Narrated by Ibn Umar. The Prophet said, "If your women ask permission to go to the mosque at night, allow them." Volume 1, Book 12, number 825. Narrated by Salama. The wife of the Prophet. In the lifetime of Allah's apostle, the women used to get up when they finished their compulsory prayers with taslim. The Prophet and the men would stay on at their places as long as Allah will. When the Prophet got up, the men would then get up. Volume 1, Book 12, number 826. Narrated by Aisha. When Allah's apostle finished the Fajr prayer, the women would leave covered in their sheets and were not recognized owing to the darkness. Volume 1, Book 12, number 827. Narrated by Abdullah bin Abi Qatada al-Ansari. My father said, Allah's apostle said, "Whenever I stand for prayer, I want to prolong it, but on hearing the cries of a child, I would shorten it as I dislike to put its mother in trouble." Volume 1, Book 12, number 828. Narrated by Aisha. Had Allah's apostle known what the women were doing, he would have forbidden them from going to the mosque as the women of Bani Israel had been forbidden. Yahya bin said, a sub-narrator, asked Amra, another sub-narrator, "Were the women of Bani Israel forbidden?" She replied, "Yes."